Hi, this is Fred from Tactical Workshop. This is the third tutorial video for fixed bayonets. Today we're going to talk about how to move your units and leaders on the map. So the movement factors of units can be found in the lower right corner of each counter. Here we have three different units from the Spanish Army, cavalry units. This is a standard movement factor here in black. This is a green movement factor for light cavalry or light infantry that can convert into a skirmish screen formation. And this is a movement factor in white for chalk cavalry. Now the printed movement factor of a unit can be modified by status, weather, or other game restrictions. For example, if a unit is disordered, it will only have half its printed movement factors rounded down. If it's pen cavalry, also half. If it's in square, it's going to have 1/3 of its movement factors rounded down. If it moves in line, every hex it enters will cost 1 extra movement factor. During turns of snowfall, fog or rain, units have only half of their movement factors rounded down, also during night turns. And during turns of squall weather, they only can use 1/3 of their movement factors rounded down. Please refer to the rules and the player aid charts for details on how those modifiers are applied. Units spend movement factors according to the MFCOT, cost of terrain, found on the terrain effects table. For example, a clear X would cost any type of unit 1 movement factor to enter. Woods would vary between infantry, cavalry, would be prohibited for artillery, and cost 1 for leaders and units in skirmish screen. Hex sides incur sometimes additional costs, as it's seen here for the slope or the arrow seco. Some hexes show colored numbers. For example, the green numbers on the woods or village hexes show that the unit needs to enter general order to be able to enter those hexes. And yellow numbers show that a difficult terrain TEM check is required for units that attempt to cross such a hex side. For example, a unit in column entering clear X will spend 1 movement factor per X, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. If it was in line, it would spend an additional movement factor per X, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so forth. The cost for rotating a unit in most formation is 1 point. So if a unit here in line wants to rotate, it's going to cost 1, 2, 3 to rotate within its X. In column, similarly, 1, 2, 3. If the unit is like here in extended line formation, the forward movement is going to be similar, 2, 4, 6, for a normal line. If it wants to rotate now, it's going to have to pay the cost of terrain for the marker that will rotate forward. So for example, for a right rotation, that marker will move here. The whole unit rotates to the right. That's 2 points. 1 point for the forward movement, 1 extra point because it's in line. If that marker were to rotate across a certain terrain feature, for example here, it would actually pay the cost of crossing that feature in addition to entering the new X. So in that case, it would be for cavalry an additional 2 points. So it would cost 1 point for the forward movement in clear X, 2 points to cross the arroyo seco, 1 more point for the line. That would be a total of 4 points just to make that single rotation. To extend or retract from a line or to a line or any type of extended formation, it costs the value of the X entered by the extended marker. For example, here, if I want to extend here, it's 1 point to extend that unit here. It would cost 1 point to remove the marker and contract the unit. Similarly, if I was in column wanting to change to a road column formation, it would cost 3 points to have that cavalry unit change formation into road column, because changing formation for cavalry is 3 points. And then when it moves forward here, it would actually leave a trailing X of a road column marker, and that's free. If it wants to contract, it needs to bring that road column marker inside for 1 point and then change formation. When an extended unit crosses a certain terrain feature, it pays the cost at once. So for example, if it's crossing that feature here, that Aeroseko straight, it would pay the cost of the Aeroseko. So 2 points to move forward, 2 points to move forward, another 2 points plus 2 to cross the Aeroseko, paid by both sides at the same time. So 2, 4, 6, 8 points here to make that move. If the unit was to cross the same feature but straddling the feature, it would pay the cost twice. For example, 2 points to move forward in line, another 2 points plus 2 for that particular extension marker to cross the Aeroseko, that would be another 4 points, and then another 4 points for the other side to cross the same feature. If a unit enters a hex that contains multiple terrain features, it has to pay the cumulative cost of all those features. For example, this cavalry unit would move 1 forward in a clear X, and then enter a woods X that is also higher than its current location, which would be 4 points, plus an extra point for the slope, so 5. So 1 plus 5, 6. Now that unit, of course, would be in general order, having entered a general order mandating X. Talking about general order, entering a terrain that mandates general order comes with a free formation change, so you don't have to pay the cost of formation change. On the other hand, if you want to exit that hex, for example, let's say that unit here is in the woods in general order. If it wants to exit the X, it needs to pay the formation cost change in addition to entering that new X. So 1 point to enter the X, 3 points to change the formation. At that point, it can select a different formation, whether it is line, column, or even road column if it wants to continue and then extend and leave a trailing marker here. Let's take a look at difficult terrain. That's terrain that's indicated by a yellow number on the terrain effects table. That cavalry unit in line wants to cross the Chicapirana here. It's going to move forward for 2 points. It's in line. And we'll cross the Chicapirana for an additional 4 movement factors. 1 for being in line, another 3 to cross the obstacle. So that's another 5 points here to enter that X. After it crosses the terrain, it has to make a TEM check. If it rolls over its TEM, it will become disordered and stop its movement right there. If it passes the check, it can continue to move. For example, here it was 2 plus another 5, that's 7, 9, 12, and so forth. Here we have a unit that's in road column. It's extended along the road here. Because it's on a road, in road column, it's going to benefit from the road rate, which is half a point, half a movement factor per X. So that unit will actually spend half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, and so forth, with the actual road column marker trailing behind it. Notice that the change of orientation on a road are free as long as it's not an about face. Let's take a look at this situation here. You got a couple of French units next to a couple of British units. The problem for that infantry unit here in column is that it is in the reaction zone of those 2 British units. If it wants to exit that hex, it would have to either rotate for 3 points and then exit the X. Actually, for 2 points, the first rotation is free. The problem is that any movement factor spent into the reaction zone of those units would trigger a skirmish reaction roll, which would possibly stop the unit's movement. So in order to exit the X here without incurring any penalty, that unit can do what's called a minimum move. A minimum move can be executed in any X as long as the unit doesn't change formation or facing, even if the cost of doing so exceeds the unit's movement factors. For example, here, it could retreat 1 X like this without incurring any penalty. With respect to enemy reactions, movement could be stopped by an enemy reaction. For example, that French unit is moving, 1, 2. At that point here, the British unit can declare a skirmish check on the French unit. So the unit here has to make a TEM check. If the TEM is failed, then the unit must stop its move here, cannot fire, cannot assault. If the unit passes its TEM check, it can continue its action, either by continuing to move, change orientation, or declare an assault or fire. If it wants to change formation, it would have to declare so. The British player could then ask for another skirmish check. If that skirmish check is failed, the reaction change does not happen. Changing formation. Now you can refer to the formation change cost table on the player 8 charts. It's going to tell you how many movement factors are spent when a unit changes formation. But basically, the rule is for infantry, regular infantry, it costs 1 point. So for example, that column could change into a line for 1 point. And then it would spend another point, for example, if it wants to extend. That cavalry unit here would spend 3 points, 3 movement factors to actually change into a line. The artillery unit here would spend 2 points to unlimber. Now, in order for that unit to limber again, it would have to pass a limbering check, meaning rolling less or equal than that number here, in order to spend 2 points to limber back. Finally, that unit here is poorly trained because of the red TEM factor here, and it costs that unit all its movement factors to change formation. Now, stacking is an important concept in the game. The basic stacking rule is that an infantry or cavalry unit in line or column can stack up to 12 steps in a clear X. For example, here, those 3 battalions from that 12th Light Infantry Regiment can stack together, whether they are in line or in column. And here we would have actually 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 steps in that X. So that X would not be overstacked. Of course, stacking that many steps in a hex might not be advantageous for a player, because such a stack would incur fire penalties against it, because it presents a masked target. Now, if we overstack a hex, for example here, we would have 9 plus 4, 13 steps in a hex, which would be overstacked for units in column. That would still be below the absolute limit of a clear X, which is 18. So that X is technically not overstacked with respect to the physical space that the men can occupy in that X, but it is overstacked with respect to the formation, which means that such a stack cannot rotate, cannot change stacking order, and the only way for such a stack to be able to rotate or change formation would be for a unit to leave the X, thereby bring that X back to the formation stacking limit, which allows the units in the X now to change facing, formation, and so forth. Units in square usually can only spend 1/3 of their movement factors, rounded down. For example, that unit here would have 2 movement factors to spend, so it could do 1, 2 while moving in square. However, there is a special rule that allows unit to quick step in square. That rule allows the unit to spend half of its movement factors rounded up to move while in square. For example, this unit would have 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the problem is that after making such a move, the unit has to make a TEM check. If it fails, it becomes disordered. Finally, there is a special rule that's called force march. It's not allowed in every battle, but when it is allowed, if a leader has an order on map and passes a TEM check, it would allow all the infantry and artillery and train units in its formation to double their movement factors for that particular activation. This does not apply to cavalry units, and it cannot be attempted if any unit of that formation is within 4 X's of an enemy unit. In this case, all the units here would have a movement factor of 14. Now, the force march movement factor bonus cannot exceed 15, so for example, that leader would not be doubled to 16, it would be doubled to a maximum of 15.
This completes the movement tutorial. Thanks for watching, and for any other question about movement, please refer to the following rules.